Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1099 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Once again, another really great chapter of One Piece. Nothing really crazy, unexpected, but you know, it's the end of the Kuma flashback, and I feel really satisfied by all of it. It's crazy how we've been in this awkward state of this flashback is going so hard, and we have to have more of it. But at the same time, the events that we were left with in Egghead were also incredibly hype with Saturn, the state of the battle, Kizaru, literally anything that could possibly happen, and every character involved is interesting. So in a weird way, I'm kind of glad that the Kuma flashback is winding down, so that I actually know what I want. And right now, anybody that's been around for a long time knows that Oda, for whatever reason, it's just his thing, man. Like, when the numbers of the chapters end in 50 or 100, likely something crazy is about to happen. So after the last chapter, we speculated a bit about what would happen, and basically, I told you guys that the expectation should be, right? Simple answer is often the right one, that Vegapunk is going to cure Bonnie. We're gonna figure out some things about what happened in Sorbet, how Kuma became the tyrant, right? And that's how this chapter is gonna be. And it was. But I said in tinfoil land, Oda might be able to do a little bit more with this flashback. And it offered an idea in a way, basically, where Oda could absolutely destroy our hearts once again, if he wanted to. Basically, Kuma sees the real Bonnie actually die, and then Vegapunk clones her. So the Bonnie that is currently in the story is not the original one, which was a plausible idea. And just imagine Kuma as he reacts to Bonnie's death. I mean, look, this guy has had a soul-crushing backstory, and this would be the cherry on the top, using the phrase cherry very loosely, because usually that's a good thing, but everything about Kuma has just been, man, depressing. Now, I don't usually bring up these theories after they're proven wrong like this, but I feel like there's some things that I can say about this that are important to say. So just be patient with me as I get to my point. Firstly, I've become really sensitive to really delivering these kinds of ideas to you the way that I have in the past. It's almost to a detriment to my channel because they're good ideas, right? Even if you didn't like the idea or whatever, like it could have potentially happened and it could have been potentially a good moment, you know, but Oda is writing the story. So I definitely worry about creating unmet expectation. Like, I do actually feel like Oda could have gotten more out of the end of this flashback if he wanted to. But that's not necessarily the best thing for the story either, weirdly. But I said in the video it wasn't really necessary, and it potentially creates disappointment because people are expecting something a little bit greater than what we actually got. And another thing about the theory itself is that some of the evidence that seemed incontrovertible had to do with how characters were actually drawn. For instance, young Bonnie and Egghead interacting with water, supposedly taking away her devil fruit ability, doesn't look like it's 10 years old based on other things that Oda has drawn. So aha, Bonnie can't be 10. Therefore, she must have died. And look, man, I'll do this again in the future, and for those that actually listen to this review, you'll be able to call me out on it because I'm cheating. But it's literally true that the Bonnie that we see in this flashback right now, 10 years old or younger, looks older than the Bonnie that came out of the water spout at the beginning of Egghead. Which is just a reminder that anything having to do with drawings whatsoever, consistency is usually wrong. It's just the way that it is. Accuracy is only one concern that Oda has. If he can draw a character in a certain way in order to express something, whether it be proportional size or cuter or whatever it might be, he'll do it. So it's just a reminder to take theories for what they are, whether they're from me or anybody else. But I have a couple other points. For one, I have a very strong suspicion, especially since the Kuma flashback is wrapping up, we're heading back to Egghead. Chapter 1100, the next chapter, when we're back in Egghead, is going to drop a bomb. And Oda and his love for numbers wanted that to happen, probably. And the second thing is you guys remember the last chapter that Oda didn't finish drawing it? I've talked around to some people. There's nothing wrong with Oda that I can discern. He's fine, right? So the first chapter that Oda could not finish in the history of One Piece, I really think it's because he had difficulty writing it. Just philosophically, spiritually, Oda seems to want to write uplifting stories, and he digs down and he creates these strong, powerful moments, often in flashbacks, but it is not the prevalent feeling that One Piece gives you, and it's almost like Oda is forced to do it for the sake of the story. Because to appreciate the good, you need the bad as well. And we all know that Oda has a particular talent for creating heartbreaking flashbacks. Like, he has a skill, and it's probably because he can feel it. which is actually something that I read in an interview recently, like when the characters cry, Oda cries. Which is also like, man, God bless him. But you know, a lot of us are there with him. And as an anecdote, this is an element of artistry that I think is kind of underappreciated. You can look at some very technically gifted people in music, for instance. They can play their instrument just to absurd degrees. But it's just very clear that they're not feeling sort of the spirit of the music. Or as a more relevant example to the idea of this channel, right, I think that the same thing is true of other mangakas. People who know how to draw things, but are less good at making those drawings convey and elicit emotion. Which I guess nobody here actually cares about, but yeah, I find it interesting, okay? But the point of me saying this is I think that writing flashbacks is just generally hard for Oda, and this one went a step above. I kind of think that Oda couldn't inflict any more suffering on Kuma. Seriously. Even if it was possible that he thought or his editors thought that it might be a good idea. So in a weird way, I feel like I've learned from this, and I think that you guys should too. Like, if ever the story gets like absurdly tragic too much, it's probably a smart idea to theorize that Oda's gonna dial it back. There's just a certain balance that it seems like Oda wants to maintain with the story. Anyway, I know that a lot of you found this conversation boring. It was a long way to get to like a little small anecdote, but I felt like saying it, so we did. I would say that this chapter just felt good. And regardless of my desire for more heartbreak, I think that we can all agree that Kuma earned it. I thought it was incredibly cool how Oda carved out for Kuma in this flashback his own little pirate adventure. Like, we all know that Kuma became a Shichibukai, which means that he was a pirate. But it's just something I totally took for granted, something I wasn't anticipating at all, that Oda wanted us to know the kind of pirate he was. Curing Bonnie's disease was Kuma's One Piece. It was the reason that he set out to the sea, and like Luffy, right, the actual adventure of it mattered. No different than Gold Roger looking for poneglyphs. Kuma had to explore every nook and cranny of the world. And you better believe that this is symbolic. And Oda flipped that back to explain the places that he sent the struts to during the time skip, which was just incredibly smart. But yeah, we talked in recent chapter reactions, right? It's abundantly clear that Kuma is a near Joy Boy. Inspired by him, he wanted to be like him. And ultimately, I think just the same as Luffy, his pirate adventure mirrored him. As Bonnie is Kuma's One Piece, the One Piece itself, following the poneglyphs, reaching that destination, you're gonna find out what Joy Boy's One Piece was. I'm 100% convinced that those stones tell you what his dreams were, left unfulfilled because he could not accomplish them. So the stones are like a physical embodiment of the inherited will. Most likely we'll have a video soon talking about Joy Boy, but particularly talking about near Joy Boys, because there's several of them in the story. Obviously, Luffy is gonna be Joy Boy, Roger is a near one, Kuma is a near one, Oden is a near one, Noland is also a near one. You guys get it. I just want that on your mind because we're gonna talk more about this, with a character nobody expects and nobody really talks about. But I really think that Oda has explored the story of Joy Boy from every possible angle that he can imagine, or has time for, by switching up the variables. Everybody who is close to Joy Boy but not Joy Boy has something or several things missing, which impacts how their stories play out. In Kuma's case, and this is so interesting to me, he's too selfless to be Joy Boy. And Oda strums this chord with a freaking dawn when he has Kuma's story play out that he loses his personality. The selfless guy actually loses his self. Or I suppose loses is the wrong word. He gives his self up, which is like, dear God. Literally, nothing he does is for himself. And nothing establishes this more than having his treasure be the health of somebody else. What Joy Boy would do, and I just should note here that what Joy Boy would do in my mind is what Luffy would do, because, I mean, he's the hero of the story. He ultimately fulfills all the prophecies, so like, Luffy is that guy. What Luffy would do is find a cure for himself that just happened to work for everybody else. And actually, he wouldn't consider it a cure at all. He would be searching for something and it would end up being the cure for everybody. He, in fact, has no idea of how it's going to be used. It's just really interesting to sort of dissect this and analyze like the ideas that Oda might be playing with. You know, Luffy would never intentionally give up his sense of self. That's something that Kuma would do that Luffy would not. Oda is pretty painstaking in establishing that Luffy always does what he wants to. If not always, in 99.9% of cases. Coupled with his extreme ambition, his desire for freedom, there's only two ways in which Luffy's story plays out. He either succeeds as himself, living his best life, or he dies. I think that Kuma had a lot of room for growth that he never achieved, and he mostly didn't achieve it because he was willing to sacrifice himself. He was always the disregarded priority. This also applies to Kuma's general nature of being a follower and not a leader. Only in very extreme cases did Kuma take the reins of his life. He, of course, like Nika, like Joy Boy, wanted to fulfill other people's desires, their dreams, but he did it for them and not for himself. And this is actually part of the chapter that I enjoyed, because as you read Kuma, you realize like there's two distinct versions of him. Kuma's nature is as a pacifist. He doesn't want to fight, and this leads to him acting out of character. Basically, he's doing things that he doesn't want to do, which is also very unlike Nika. Oda actually commented on this in the chapter with some very great dialogue between Dragon and Kuma. Dragon calls these titles hats, which by itself is like, okay, I want more of this. But then he clarifies like, we don't believe any of these things that people are reporting about you. But Kuma answers the question very seriously. He says completely deadpan, people change, because he feels like he acted out of character. While Dragon obviously forgives Kuma for doing what he wants, doing what he needs to, knowing that whatever Kuma was doing was likely for the best. What he doesn't seem to understand is that was not what Kuma wanted. What Kuma truly wanted was to make the world a better place without throwing a single punch. And it's just so cool to me that Oda included this dialogue as a little acknowledgement of the deeper thoughts that he has about the characters. The titles that Kuma carries are almost symbolically scars. And to the comment of different hats, maybe there's like, it makes me think that there's a reason why this one single straw hat has survived generations, unchanged. But at the same time, this is why we feel something when Kuma snaps and then suddenly, you know, he's a berserker, just a one-man death machine. But to go back to the parallels between Kuma and Joy Boy, I think that when we go back and look at this flashback, there's going to be elements of it that are going to carry over to actual Joy Boy's story from the Void Century. That's just my gut feeling. Kuma becoming king of Sorbet is going to be a parallel to Joy Boy becoming king of the pirates. Just the same as Roger, another near Joy Boy, similar to Odin as well. The title of king is just going to be something that's thrust on him, that he wasn't actually aiming for. And I also think that you guys should consider whether Joy Boy is king of the pirates, potentially king of the world during the Void Century, basically had someone or other people rule in his stead, while he did what he wanted to do. And again, Joy Boy, like Odin and now like Kuma, I think there was some sort of smear campaign against him, like the world turned against him. Oda's been kind of repetitive with that, and I think that there's a point to it. I really do think that that is a part of Joy Boy's story. I know you guys think I'm whiling right now, right? But these are predictions that we've already made about Joy Boy in other theory videos, but it's just like so happens that Kuma, who we've related to Joy Boy this entire time, shares the same concepts. Coincidence? I think not. But anyway, Kuma became one of the strongest people on the planet while essentially not even trying. There's no doubt in my mind that in an alternate universe where Kuma's personality is a little bit different, I mean, this dude is Yonko level, no doubt. If he had even the slightest desire to fight, we'd be talking about a man with the most top-tier hockey in every facet. And I know that we shouldn't take too much from this, but it just puts into perspective how incredibly incredible the Buccaneer race likely was. It reminds me that one thing I definitely want to see from the story as we head into Elbaf is I put giants on a higher pedestal than Buccaneers just because of their size alone. The island of Elbaf, the race of giants, have been treated differently. Like they are the one thing or one of the few things the government has been totally unable to touch. So I want to see some giants in the story put up feats like Kuma. You know, they'll just have that energy of like, this is the potential of what they could be. I want to see that. I'm basically praying for a lurking legend giant figure that's sort of been trapped in that island and the world doesn't really know who he is. Man marked by flames? But yeah, speaking of races and wild speculations, this is another, it's really hard to convey this one as well, but guys, I just feel like it's possible that Buccaneers, like the original race itself, were engineered before during the Void Century. Technology today is only catching up to what it once was, and Oda loves parallels. Most of, if not every idea that Vegapunk has is related to something that existed during the Void Century, and I apply that to the Pacifista as well. I think that during or before the Void Century, there was an actual army of super soldiers. And if that's true, some remnant, some relic of that remains today. And I wouldn't be surprised if it is the Buccaneer race. So understanding that this is totally tinfoil, I kind of read between the lines of the Vegapunk-Kuma conversation. I already was thinking this stuff, you know, Buccaneers as Marines of the distant past. They performed that role. That's why they were created. Definitely from context clues, though, you can tell that there's something uniquely special about Buccaneer blood that made Vegapunk light up with the idea of Pacifista. And this was another thing that I really loved about this chapter is the characterization of Vegapunk, man. Vegapunk has been all over the place in the best possible way. We've seen him interact in various timelines, whatever, but this chapter really conveyed how Vegapunk had sort of gotten lost in the science of it. Like Einstein, who he's designed based on, he's creating things that are ultimately going to be used different to his intentions. In my opinion, this is going to be a masterful segue as we go back to regular Egghead, Vegapunk now dealing with the consequences of everything that he's created and who he's created it for. I really think that with Vegapunk, we're going to see something similar to Frankie in the Water 7 flashback with Tom, creating weapons that you never intended to be weapons that are ultimately used against you. Speaking of Joy Boy parallels in the chapter, right, this is definitely related to the lore of the ancient weapons. We already know what one of the ancient weapons was, right? Shiroshi, the mermaid princess, who above all else is like a sweet flower. There's no way that she was ever meant to be a weapon. Yet this is what her power is called, and likely there's a reason for that. But more tangibly, because the ancient weapon Poseidon is a lineage and, you know, it's different, right? But Pluton is an actual weapon that was created by architects, scientists. The makers of Pluton regretted it and ultimately created blueprints for a counter Pluton in the case that it ever falls into the wrong hands again. They made something that will literally kill their invention. So I'd keep this in mind with Vegapunk. Does Vegapunk have any plans with anything that he created? Did he create a failsafe of some sort? I also think that you guys should consider the line that Tom said to Frankie. Even if the ship that you've made could hurt somebody, even if it could bring ruin to the world, its only parent must give it love. You mustn't deny that which you've created. The ship isn't to blame. When we get back to Vegapunk, I would be very surprised if there is nothing that relates to this line. His inventions are not poised to bring ruin to the world. Will Vegapunk love them or reject them? But anyway, guys, I don't want to talk all day. I'm already a little late for this review because of the holiday season, Thanksgiving, and frankly, I just need a little break. But I enjoyed everything about this chapter, following Bonnie's story, how Oda tied everything together. He gave an explanation for everything. I don't need to sit here and list it all out. You guys read the chapter, you know. It was really great. But now I'm really ready to move back to Egghead, so I am very excited about that. As always, let me know what you thought about the chapter. Let me know if I missed anything that you guys wanted to talk about. Just share them in the comments section below. Remember, check out my books, The Booms. Volumes 1 through 3 are out. Links in the description. If you guys happen to read it, please leave a review. Let other people know what you thought about it, good or bad. But yeah, like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.